Well, hello again, KCIW listeners, and welcome to Curry Café. I'm volunteer Rick McNamer. Every Sunday from 3 to 4, your host, Ray Gary, and I put together a panel of guests to discuss various topics of interest that impact our wonderful community. Listeners can participate by texting questions or comments to 541-661-4098. Again, that's 541-661-4098. And today would be a great day to get some text and questions or comments in. So now here's Ray to tell us about today's show.
Well, we have two guests today. One is, can we announce your run? Oh, you want to do that? Bret Cecil, who will tell you about himself. And then we have Dr. Melissa Bird is also running for office, and she'll get to tell us about her ideas.
You bet.
And we will query her to see what...
She's ready. I have a...
She may or may not get the KCIW bump. We'll find out.
Oh, hopefully. So go ahead, Melissa. You've got the floor to... Let's start out, and you can tell us about all your good stuff going on.
Right. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Melissa Bird. I'm very happy to be here with you today. I live in Corvallis, Oregon, and I am running for Congress in Oregon's 4th Congressional District Democratic primary, taking place on May 19th. I am a small business owner and a working mom, and I have 3 kids. 2 are in high school, 1 just graduated from college, and I'm married to a disabled veteran. I'm also a descendant of the Shivwitz band of Paiutes from Utah and Arizona.
All right. And real quick on the when I worked for the railroad, I was out in Nevada, and I thought the Paiutes, you say Utah and Arizona, you said?
Yeah, so I'm Southern Paiute. So
okay.
Our Paiutes are not the Northern Paiutes of Nevada, although we are cousins.
Okay.
But our Paiute tribe is from Southern Utah and the North Rim of the Grand Canyon.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think it's important to have a tribal representative these days in our government.
Me too. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we'll go to Bret now. You ready to make the big announcement?
Like a quick intro.
Well, get the drum roll.
For listeners who know me, I'm Bret Cecil. I'm from Port Orford here in Curry County. I this morning officially filed my bid for state representative here in the state of Oregon in House District 1. So that's a seat that currently Representative Court Boyce holds. I will be running against Court Boyce again this year. I did in 24, and I ran against David Brocksmith in 22. So I'm hoping that third time's the charm.
Congratulations, Bret.
Thank you. So I'll be seeing you out on the trail, Melissa.
I certainly hope so.
Okay, let's also tell us, now you've written a couple of books. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah, I've written a couple of books. I actually got my start writing when I wrote. I have a master's degree and a PhD in social work, so I have a background in community organizing, advocacy, and policy through my social work practice. And I wrote my first book about careers in social justice advocacy when I was still getting my PhD and finishing my PhD down at USC. And then I've written a couple books since. One is called Love Notes and Prayers, Guidance for the Soul. And it is a ebook about getting more in touch with your intuition and leading from a place of community and connection. And then I actually have a book that's being published, should be coming out this year, I hope, about intuitive leadership and how we can lead from a space of community and connection in our communities to engage in advocacy and leadership in a different way. So those are my books.
Well, that's pretty awesome. And again, you have another hobby, I believe. Is it doll making?
Yes, I actually I do needle felted dolls. So during the pandemic, one of the things I did was learn how to do needle felting My mother, also a former small business owner, used to own a fabric store when I was younger. That's where I used to work when I was a teenager. And so I'm really good at needlework, cross stitching, and needlepoint. But I learned how to needle felts, which is basically where you take a ball of raw wool and then you stab it with a needle and turn it into something beautiful. And so I've been doing needle felting now since the beginning of the pandemic. It's pretty amazing.
Well, I bet that's pretty calming too. And is there some maybe tribal influence in any of that?
Yes, my dolls very much end up being very spiritual.
Okay.
They are spirit dolls. They're really beautiful. I really love them a lot.
Well, that's awesome. Well, to get off with let's start with the campaign coming up, or for the primary. So you and Val, of course, basically on the same team, but what differences have encouraged you to challenge her for the office?
I think there are a couple of key differences. It's so interesting to get this question because people frame this question in so many different ways.
Oh, I hope I did
Great.
okay.
Yeah, you did great. Yeah, no, it's really interesting because some people are like, "What do you have against her?" And I'm like, "I don't have anything."
Well, right. Right.
And then, I think it's really important for people to discern these differences. So I'm really glad you asked that question. And one of the biggest things I think is just the differences in how I am approaching the campaign. I am very much we are a working class family. We've been on food stamps before. We're on Medicaid. My husband gets disability from the VA. He's actually a marine biologist who works out in the fishery out of Newport. And I believe that it is time for us to have people in Congress who understand what it is like to exist in this economy, especially raising children right now with all of the issues that are happening with our public education. And one of the things that really pushed me into running is that I think we need people at the federal level who are fighters, who are ready to fight back against the rising tide of fascism in this country. And I think we need people in office who have a leadership style that is based in community. So one of our biggest focuses on the campaign has been to especially focus on rural areas and the parts of the district that in my experience, have been neglected at the federal level. And so because I live in Corvallis, a lot of the focus, because many of our elected officials for Congressional District 4 have been from Eugene, Springfield area, we have not had a lot of representation outside of Eugene. And so one of my big focuses is on how are we addressing the needs of folks in rural communities. I have been talking a lot about the Rural New Deal, which is a framework that was put out by the Rural Urban Bridge Initiative. And they have created this incredible framework where you ask communities, rural communities, what is it that you need the most to engage in economic development? And how are we bridging the rural urban divide by making sure that rural communities have resources to engage with those things? And so a lot of the difference is that I lead from a space of community and reciprocity. That's not just my background as a Native person and also a spiritual leader in my community, but also my background in social work and the idea of leading by asking people, approaching people where they're at, not where we want them to be, and really thinking about how are the needs of each community different and how can we resource those communities so that we're addressing their needs.
Yeah, and that divide, rural and I guess urban, I don't know, is, I should have threw out a disclaimer here before I started yapping, by the way. I'm a Californian. I live on the California side of the border. I live in Smith River. But I'm up here in Brookings probably
And we
2 or 3 times.
we keep a close eye on his ears.
Yeah, they watch
I know
me
some of you are
closely.
probably worried about that, but
Rick, you're well exposed in Oregon.
But I was so District 4, Melissa, is probably mostly all rural. Am I that correct? Or is there?
Yeah. Well, first I want to say that borders are not real. So
love
just for
that.
the record, the Native American in me needs to remind everybody borders aren't real. But
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
The district is from, it's huge. It's from the border of California and Oregon all the way up the coast to the top of Lincoln County, and then all of Benton County and all of Lane County. So the district is mostly rural, except for we have our two college towns, Eugene and Corvallis, included within the district.
Okay. And as a surprise for a lot of people, we haven't got many texts lately, but we just got a text, and I'm going to read this text. And it says, Melissa, New Ways of Advocacy as a book subject sounds fascinating. What do you see as effective paths to better advocacy? And let me remind everybody the text number 541-661-4098. So did you get that full text without me interrupting with the number, Melissa?
Yeah, I did. And I used to. Yeah, thank you for the question. I used to teach social justice advocacy and policy to social work students. And one of the things that I always taught my students is to really focus on the thing that you're most passionate about. So I got my start in policy advocacy back in 2001 when I was getting my master's degree. And I did the first research on homeless LGBTQ plus youth in Utah. And you can imagine that advocating for that group of people, particularly in such a conservative space, would have been really complicated. But one of the things that I learned through that process was, again, it's remembering that I think that advocacy starts from remembering in our shared humanity. And I think right now that can be incredibly complicated because of all the divisiveness and the things that we are constantly exposed to online. So one of my biggest recommendations for folks who want to engage in advocacy, particularly in their communities, is to remember that to focus on what you're passionate about, because we get pulled in a million different directions when we want to advocate for something. And if we focus on the things that we're passionate about, then it helps us engage with community in a different way and in a more centered way, where we are being driven towards, we figure out that everything is, of course, interwoven and related, like what's happening with ICE, what's happening with housing, what's happening with veterans, what's happening with healthcare. Those things are all related. But when we focus on one piece of whatever makes us feel lit up and passionate, we're able to affect change in a way that becomes tangible, so we don't get burned out.
And boy, how burned out can we get? We discussed that before the show, talking about the, we try to focus today on the Oregon issues, but what's going on nationally and in the world affects everybody.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh,
well,
I didn't want to be the only one, but I think Ray got some questions too.
I was framing something.
Okay, Mr. Ray. Okay.
And now you broke up my train of thought.
Okay.
It's going to be that much longer again.
Do you want to go back to your train? Because I have a question for Melissa, if I may.
Go right ahead.
Hi, Melissa. Bret again. Listen, I'm the chair of the Curry County Democrats. So in my county, I get to engage and interact with Democrats. Although I understand as running for a representative seat in the state of Oregon in the same way that you are for Congress, our U.S. Congress, that we represent all Oregonians, everybody in the district. Yep. And it's something I struggle with explaining to some of my own constituents that are Democrats. It's like, I am not running in the sense of being an enemy with my opponent, is the term I like to use. Court Boyce is my opponent in this race, and we have been opponents before. Court and I know each other fairly well. We get along well. He's a very affable, friendly man. My issues with Court are around his ideologies and not necessarily with him as an individual. So where I'm going with that also is that the seats for which we are running, so you're running for CD4 or Congressional District 4, I'm running for House District 1, those seats belong to the people that live in those districts. I'm not running to own that seat, just like you're not running to own that seat also. So it's something that we need to keep in mind, and I want people to keep in mind when they talk to us that we're there to represent everybody that's in that district, not ourselves. I want to tell people what my ideas are and how I think we can improve our lives and to respect the dignity of the people that live in the districts. So my question in leading up to all of that is, how do you see, and I'm going to ask for some advice from you too, how do you see, or how do you get rural folks, and not just rural people, but people that live in our districts, how do you get them to engage with you? Because we represent everyone, but if I can't get people's opinions or understand what people's needs are, it's really difficult for me to represent them. So I'm just wondering if you have any tricks up your sleeve, how you reach out into communities that otherwise you may not have great access to. Because I've struggled with that in the past. And I'll leave the question for you there.
Yeah, I really appreciate you asking this question because this has been something that we've been really thoughtful about and intentional on the campaign. And so we have asked particularly local leaders in the community where we should be and how we should be engaging. So a lot of the ways that we have approached this campaign is to really connect with regular folks in the community. And some of that has been just through asking people, maybe people who are engaged in service work in the community, whether it's through nonprofit organizations. I've done a lot of reaching out to city and county council folks throughout the district. And also I'm reaching out to both elders and young people so that I'm getting a broad swath of folks throughout the district who are not just tied to party or to certain affinity groups, but really trying to engage with a broad swath of people. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, one of the things that I love about growing up in Utah was learning how to engage with people who don't agree with me, and learning how to connect with people on this very human level. I think is really important, especially when it comes to these polarized, divided partisan politics. And one of the things that I have learned from traveling, I mean, I've been up and down the district now once, and I'm getting ready to go out again, all throughout the district, is just reminding people, particularly like if I'm posting in community Facebook groups or really engaging with people at a community level, is really asking people intentionally what issues are most important to you right now. Because I can't, as I'm phone calling, and you know this, Bret, when you are on a campaign, you're on the phone all the time calling people. I'm constantly asking people what issues are most important to them right now. And I'm finding that through line with people. It doesn't matter if they are Republicans or Democrats or independents or unaffiliated voters. People are very concerned about their health care right now. People are very concerned um, about fires. They're concerned about housing. And so they're very concerned about the economy. And so I think that when we approach our elections as opportunities to engage with people about what issues are most important to them, because what I know is that what the issues in Port Orford are not the same as the issues in Roseburg, for example, right? Like, but there's a continuous thread that I'm finding in general about particular topics. And so I think it is really important for voters to remember that you're not just voting for party, you're voting for a person. And we need people in Congress right now, I believe, who can best represent the entirety of the district and what's in the bestest interest of the district. And I don't feel like we're getting that from our current representative.
And isn't the climate that we have, you mentioned polarization. Me personally, I don't think I've ever seen this country more polarized than I.
Well, we've been
right?
polarized before, but not as.
Not
I
like
mean, the ends of those polar things are much further than
Right,
they were.
right. So, and Melissa, so have you, while you've been out there, have you sensed a meeting of the minds, between some of the people that might be on opposite sides of that spectrum?
Yeah, I think there's two things that come to mind when you ask me that question. The first one is that I have found that as things become more and more polarized, these ideas that I hold true, these beliefs about our communities that I hold true, somehow have become a lot more people are labeling them as almost radically progressive, which I find to be so fascinating because I don't consider myself to be a radical thinker. And so it's been really interesting, particularly with people who identify on the left, more left-leaning side of politics. It's been really interesting to hear how they are interacting with my policies and the issues that I've put forth as part of the campaign. What I'm finding on folks who lean more towards the conservative side of politics is that, particularly among women, I am finding a lot of women who are looking for a political home, especially women who are over the age of, I'd say, 45 or 50, women around my age who and older, who are looking for a political home and feel very alienated by the polarization that we are experiencing in the country right now. So even if we don't agree on every issue, and I don't want to agree on every issue with my constituents, I want my constituents, no matter who they are, to be able to come to me and say, I'm having this problem and I need help. And for us as an office to be able to respond to that, even if we're not the ones that are the problem solvers, because I think a lot of time people go to the federal government and realize that it's really a city, county, or state issue. And I think being able to help people navigate that is what is critical right now in our country.
Yes, for sure. And I'll pick out one topic real quick that can affect left, right, Republican, Democrat, the healthcare that you talk about. Especially like here in this rural area. I mean, if we have, and I'm part of that, if I have to go for a more serious appointment, it's not going to be local. It's going to be at least a 2-hour drive. And there's a lot of seniors, I'll use, because I'm a senior, that not everybody can drive that far anymore, or that needs help. I mean, healthcare is huge, I think.
I have an appointment that I believe it's the middle of August.
And this is January. This is January.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Great point.
And when they gave me that date, I wasn't even a little bit shocked. So I called yesterday to see if I could get the consultation part on telemed, and of course I can't do that. So I have to drive about 250 miles to go and probably sit down with the doctor for about 15 minutes, and something he could have done on the phone, but. And I'm fortunate that I have health insurance, so what's going to be done is going to be paid for. Mm-hmm. We have a friend who recently had some medical problems and didn't have health insurance, and the debts are unbelievable.
Yeah. Again, that crosses all lines, all party lines. It's a problem that we need to. Everybody needs to work on somehow, some way.
And it does, and I think that what you're bringing up is that we've got to have folks. I mean, we've got to have folks in elected offices from all the way from school boards up to the federal level who are willing to take all of that information that you're just bringing up and really push back against this established notion that somehow healthcare is a handout or a give out. And we really need a united front in that's going to push back against this, what has become an established rhetoric that somehow helping people access safe quality healthcare is a burden on the taxpayer and the system. And I think that particularly in our rural areas, I mean, I grew up rural. I grew up in a tourist town in the mountains in Utah, and we did not have a hospital. I mean, we had to drive through blizzards to get to the hospital, right? Like we also had a problem accessing healthcare. And so it is something that's I come from a healthcare advocacy background. And so I think that, I mean, that's what I did for my career until I went to get my PhD. And so I do think it's very important for us to be getting into communities and figuring out what they need, and then incentivizing particularly family practice docs to help them get into community so that they are willing to be in those spaces.
Well, that's for sure. I mean, like I said, that's one. I wish I had an answer, but I don't think anybody can look in the future and see an answer to that one yet.
When you go around and talk to people, do you get a lot of people who are concerned about direction our government is going? It's beyond the far right now. I think we have politicians who will stand up and tell just flat-ass lies, backing up whatever the position is. And we're very quickly losing our democracy, and people don't seem to care. Do you find that to be an issue that people have?
Melissa, yes, absolutely. A lot of people that I am talking to, whether it's on the phone or when I'm at my meet and greets with people in community, that it's becoming, it has changed. So I started my campaign on July 1st, calling people and talking to voters and meeting with people. And now it used to be that they were worried about the presidency, but it was like the third thing on the list, that they were worried about the administration, but it was the third thing on the list. Now it is the very first thing, and people are terrified. They are terrified and they're frustrated and don't feel like that there is enough pushback from Congress.
That was my next question is, what would your plan be to organize some pushback or to do something? I mean, we have this guy going around violating the Constitution almost daily.
Well, I'm part of a group called the Courage Candidates, and there's about 70 of us around the country who are committed to introduce impeachment articles every single day against the administration from the minute we get into office. That's one thing. The second thing is that we have to abolish ICE. There is no question in my mind that we absolutely must stop funding this horrifying organization. But there are levers in Congress that can be pulled. And this has been my biggest frustration just since I've been running this campaign, is there are things Congress can do, even if you don't have the majority. And I think this is really important. If all of the Democrats would unite and pull the levers in Congress where they stop the business of lawmaking, it would completely and entirely change the trajectory that the country is going towards. And many people in Congress have been calling for this, but they are not. There are people, including from our own congressional delegation, quite frankly, who aren't willing to push up against that. And I don't know if it's because they lose major corporate donors. I don't know if it's because they're all funded by AIPAC, except for Senator Merkley. I don't know what it is. But I think that we have an opportunity to use the levers of Congress. That's the beauty of this democracy. That's why we have three branches of government. Congress can push back, and you don't have to have a majority to do it. And that is the thing that is frustrating me more than anything.
I keep hearing, everybody does, I guess, a particular congressman or somebody who knows a congressperson obviously see what's going on, and it's just the fact that they might lose their job. Is that the reason? I mean, if it continues the way it is, they're going to lose their country.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is it, which is why I've also committed to being to term limits. I mean, one of the very first things I did was commit to a term limit, because I don't think well, first of all, I don't think I have the energy. But second of all, I don't think that people should be serving for so long in government that they've lost touch of what it's like to be out here in the real world trying to figure out how to pay our rent or our mortgage, and how to figure out how to pay the utility bills in this economy with kids who need to eat.
But things like term limits or anything like that, we have a president right now who's threatening to run for a third term.
Yeah.
And just ignoring anything anybody says. And I don't hear anybody.
Like to, if I may, throw in something about term limits, because I agree with you, Melissa, on those points. But I'm going to take the other side of that argument. All those people that feel like they should have someone else represent them, step forward and run for office.
Yourself, yes.
Because I hear this daily we need somebody younger in office. The younger people are busy raising their families and going to 2 jobs to raise their families, to get their kids to school. They need someone in Congress or in the state house, in the legislature, that can represent their needs. Not everybody's willing or capable to be an elected. It's not for the faint-hearted. I'm learning, and you're learning.
That's for sure.
So I want to be careful with the idea of term limits. I personally believe the term limitation comes at the ballot box. If you don't like your congressperson, elect somebody else.
But we
Get
know
somebody else to run for that seat. Elect that other person. Find the person that fits right for your district and elect them. I don't think that it should be a date on a calendar. That's my personal opinion.
Well, what
So I just
about
wanted
the
to toss
idea
that in.
that the incumbent almost always wins, or a very high percentage, pretty much regardless of what their
Incumbents lose.
Yeah, but maybe not as much as they should.
And Melissa's put together, if I can say, a kick-ass campaign. She's doing a really good job getting herself out there and getting her thoughts or ideas put forward. And here she is on the radio in little bitty Curry County speaking with us.
Yeah.
So getting those ideas out there, you have to run a campaign so people know who you are. People don't come forward to speak with us, unfortunately. There are those folks that will because they want to be heard. Those are few and far between, I'm finding. So getting people to come and speak to you and let us know what they're thinking is really something that we need to work on.
And I'm going to break this up just a little bit because our text line is on fire. We've got another text. I'm going to jump back to healthcare real quick, Melissa, if I may. And again, you all, it's 541-661-4098. The texter says, and thank you for the text, to Melissa, what is your position on single-payer healthcare? I could pose that also to Bret also, but that was the text, Melissa. Single-payer.
Yeah. Yeah, we absolutely need universal health care. Bottom line, there's no question. And single payer is an option. And I believe in Medicare for all.
You bet.
I think like I said earlier in the program, our family we are on Medicare or Medicaid.
Okay.
And I think that I think it is a phenomenal program. And I think that it would not cost a lot of money for taxpayers. In fact, it would probably cost us less money because of all of the things that happen in relation to our healthcare needs. And if you have the money to pay for healthcare, then that should also be an option, right? And I think that, one of the things that we rarely talk about is what happens if veterans retire before they've hit their 20 years. Veterans are on TRICARE and they get kicked off of their health insurance if they retire before 20 years for whatever reason that they have to. And then most of those families actually end up on Medicaid. And that's something that happened to our family. And if we just allowed veterans to continue to pay into TRICARE at the same rate that they were paying into when they were in the National Guard, for example, like especially these folks who aren't active duty military but are serving in the Guard, if we let them continue to pay into the system and pay their copays, we're not paying for them on our tax dollars for Medicaid. And so we absolutely need to we have got to look at the system and look at it financially. And this is the thing that I still haven't figured out why we can't wrap our heads around this, that in the long run, making sure that we have a system where the wealthy pay into the system to get the coverage that they need, and then everybody else who can't afford it is just automatically in the system, we would be saving billions of dollars in healthcare bills. Billions. Yeah. And the taxpayer wouldn't be bearing the burden.
Yeah. And with you having, your husband is a disabled vet, you have had all kinds of experience dealing with some. I'm positive and negative, I'm guessing, with some of this stuff.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes, he can use the VA no matter what, but that leaves us, all of the, our 3 kids and me out of a system of healthcare. That because we don't access the VA, so he can access the VA, although he has to drive all the way to Roseburg or all the way to Portland, right? Because we've done such a terrible job with community care, especially with the Big Beautiful Bill, that really impacted veterans and their ability to afford
What a
care.
misnomer, for God's sakes.
Right. And so I think that, and again, this goes back to our willingness to push and push and push the envelope as hard as possible for the people in this district. We have to have the willingness to push back against the establishment of the people in power so that we are raising and elevating the level of discourse publicly so that they are also being called on the carpet for not cooperating.
Well, for sure. Now, I'm going to jump back again to to the, we talked about term limits. One thing
Before you do that, Rick, can I toss in my 2 cents on the single payer idea?
Please.
I love the idea of a national healthcare system, and everyone's going to whine about it. It's communism.
Oh, no,
Everybody gets health care. There's no reason we shouldn't all have health care.
Don't most other normal countries have it?
Well, the bigger you make the pool, the less expensive it is for everybody that's in it. That's how insurance works. And we're talking about healthcare access. We're not talking about an actual visit to the doctor. We're talking about creating access to a doctor so you get care. And that insurance pool, the same way with car insurance or fire insurance for your house.
Yeah.
All of those things depend on how many people are in the pool. The fewer people in the pool, the more expensive it is for the people that are covered, their policies that are covered within that coverage. So if everybody in the nation were essentially paying the same into the system, maybe some pay a little more if they're capable of doing that. If everybody were paying into the system and everyone getting the same level of care or care as they need, veterans they have special needs in certain areas. Lots of people do. There are lots of special needs when you get into healthcare. But everybody would have access to what their needs are. And I think overall, I agree with you, Melissa, we could save tons of money. And you could refine that system. I mean, I've heard the discussion about, what's going to happen to the insurance companies? They'll be laying off all those people. We'll still need people to work in billing, essentially. We still have to do billing within the system. So there's still going to be lots of jobs in the insurance and national insurance coverage. So I don't think that we're going to be changing anything greatly in that sense and providing good health care for Americans.
For everybody.
So thanks for that.
And I totally agree with you, Brett. And I think also, if wealthy people want to have an option that is outside of a single payer system, then more the better.
Knock yourself out.
Knock yourself out. You can pay all those insurance companies everything you want. But I really think that is a red herring. Like, I feel like.
Agreed.
I feel like that argument that, oh my God, what's going to happen to the insurance companies? Well, those still exist.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right, Brett. We will still need billing. That's not going to go away.
We still need all the administrative side to handling all of that. There will be plenty of jobs for people that work in that industry to work in, and plenty of staff, doctors and nurses and CNAs, all the folks up and down the line. We'll still have need for all of them. None of that goes away.
And what about throwing in the pharmaceutical industry and companies and all of this? I mean, boy, how much money does that?
Well, here's the other thing about a national system, and it's something that we're struggling with right now, listening to President Trump saying, I'm going to lower prices on these drugs.
Oh.
We did that in the Biden administration. There's already a list of drugs.
We didn't lower them 600% then, like we're going to do this.
I haven't gotten my check back yet for for my pharmaceuticals that I pay for every month.
I don't to change the subject a little bit. It's not a day goes by that he doesn't say something stupid like that.
Well, that's guaranteed.
But okay, he walks away from the podium. Why doesn't somebody come up and listen? We can't do that. That's what. Do they not wise him up? Are they afraid to do that, or is he just?
No one wants to countermand the president.
It's not countermanding. It's just correcting a little error.
But let's do it. So back to the pharmaceutical part of it. One of the reasons that every other nation on the entire planet has lower prices for their pharmaceuticals than we have here is because they have systems that control the prices of their pharmaceuticals in their countries, in their healthcare systems. We don't have that here. In fact, it's quite the opposite. But during the Biden administration, there was legislation passed that created lists of medications that over a period of time, there were 10 of those highly used medications that were going to have their prices controlled over years. And some of those happened and some of them are still happening. I think President Trump should jump on that and say, hey, this is good stuff. He should be using that and not denigrating the fact that we have that and thinking that Ozempic is somehow is the drug of choice for everybody in the country. That's not what I would be picking. That's just me.
I want to add to this too that this is not a partisan issue. This is a
Here we go. Yeah, right.
And I think it's really what I want the listeners to understand and hear is that, we are only as healthy as the sickest among us, right? Like we all, it doesn't matter what our background, where we come from, how much money we have, how old or young we are. rich or poor, it doesn't matter, because healthcare is a community issue. And for us to continue buying into this us versus them, you know, Republican versus Democrat. The Republicans have a better idea for healthcare. The Democrats have a better idea for healthcare. Meanwhile, all the independents and the non-affiliated voters, 43% of the state of Oregon is unaffiliated as a voter because of our voter registration. Where's all their voices? They're getting just as impacted as we are, right? And I think my big dream through, I don't know, some miracle of the universe is that we stop looking at healthcare as a partisan issue and start looking at healthcare as a community issue. If we could just somehow alleviate this idea of it being us versus them, either or,
I have an idea for you.
I think it would change the trajectory.
And it's something I think that we miss a lot of times as Democrats. We forget about the business side of it.
Yes.
We tend not to talk about business a whole lot, and we should.
Yeah.
Small business especially. If I were a small business owner providing health care to my employees, and our national government said, hey, you don't need to provide that for your employees, we're going to supply that to the entire nation, I would love to have that taken off my plate as an employer or a business owner, not to have to muck around with
How big would that be?
And you could probably lower the prices on whatever goods you're
I would
providing.
think they would all be wanting to, here, I'll pay into that system if you'll just get that off my plate.
No kidding. No kidding.
So maybe we should be addressing those who have some of the greatest impact or are impacted greatest by healthcare. Look at even some of the big corporations have healthcare, and they're constantly, we hear it from employees, what they're turning back off of their healthcare coverage. So if we had national healthcare coverage, our businesses would not have to even think about that. It would be something completely off their plate, and they could spend time on developing products that actually give us some benefit as Americans or as humans.
I agree.
Yeah. So I want to toss that to you, Melissa, to use in your campaign, something to think about. And it's something I'm going to remind myself of, because I had that discussion in my past 2 campaigns, that really is something that would be beneficial to businesses, not to have to muck around with that.
Yeah, that does sound huge. And another issue that I know Melissa was on some part of your campaign was, and reminded me of it, we have another text, and the text says, what is your position on the homeless? And housing and shelter issues is a big deal.
Well, I got my policy career started in homeless advocacy. There are a couple of things I've thought about when it comes to housing and homeless issues. The first is that we have to remember that home ownership is not the American dream. That is a myth. And also that we have to provide housing that people need, not what we think they want. And so when it comes to figuring out how to address housing and homelessness issues, there's a couple of different things. One of them is to create policy that stops corporations from being able to come in and buy up housing so that they can then own the market, particularly when it comes to vacation rentals and also regular rentals.
Stop. I agree.
That has to, investment firms cannot keep buying up homes and housing. And Corvallis is the number 2 rent burden city in the country.
Oh my. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And so I very much live in a place where this is a serious, serious issue. And also it's the number 1 issue that I hear on the coast is these investment firms coming in and purchasing housing so that we have no housing availability for people. We also need to, and I truly believe that we are going to solve the homelessness issue if we start humanizing homeless people. So one of the things that I very much have noticed, particularly here in Oregon, I've lived in several states, but here in Oregon in particular, we refer to homeless people as them, like as if they are They are not people. They are something to be eradicated and ignored and not looked at. And I think we have to bring our communities together, our community leadership, our local elected officials, as well as our our religious institutions, and also our advocates and community members, to think about how do we address homelessness in our communities in the way that fits our community best. So an example I have of that is when I lived in Utah and I was starting my career in policy, their goal was to eliminate chronic homelessness among men in Salt Lake City. So what they did was you had there was a very powerful church there, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But what they did was they brought together law enforcement, fire, mental health, social services, the food people, the education people, the religion, all of the interfaith council, and the homeless advocates sat everybody down at a table, created a plan where they took old motels that were just languishing and turned them into a housing first model where they had all of the services in the lobby, and then they had studio apartments throughout the motel. And they ended up eliminating chronic homelessness among men in Salt Lake City. I don't know what's happening now, but I know we did it in the early 2000s. And here is what I like about that model worked for that place. And so when we're looking at homelessness in Brookings and Port Orford and Gold Beach, how are we looking at the homeless people and figuring out what they need? Because when we assume that they want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, we're making an assumption of what their needs are. And usually their needs are much simpler and they cost the community a lot less money to implement if we start looking at it as a community issue. And that's what I love about the Rural New Deal, is that it actually provides a framework and an opportunity for communities to make those decisions for those communities. And then from a federal level, from like a HUD standpoint or a community development block grant standpoint, how are we giving the resources, federal, state, county, and city resources, to the agencies and organizations who are going to make that happen? So it's about increasing housing affordability. It's about making sure that we have plenty of units available for people to choose from. And it's about ensuring that we start to actually humanize homeless people as actual neighbors and community members in our community. And then to top it all off, we have to address the crises that they find themselves in. So when I was getting my PhD in Los Angeles, I worked with homeless women. And one of the things we worked on was how what does your healthcare look like? What does your mental health care look like? What does your physical health look like? And why are you there in that place? And then we could address those issues with those people. And then we resource the community to be able to do that. And I think that is the key, is we have to start seeing homeless people in our community as our actual community members.
So, Melissa, this is Bret. I'm going to stick my nose in here. So on the housing issue, and it's popped up in a couple of different places in our discussion here. I know, especially in Curry County, we don't have a quantity of housing available.
Yes.
And on top of that, we don't have places to build it. So not everybody can afford to build on a mountainside. We don't have a lot of flat land here that we could build subdivisions of homes or apartment buildings on. It's something that we've got to deal with. But we have had a program specifically in Curry County that I'm aware of using older motels and turning those into studio or small apartments. One of them is in Gold Beach. And Core Response Brookings has been at the base of that, making that happen, of putting together some veterans housing. But again, that leaves out everybody else who might have a need. I personally have found, I turned 65 this summer, so I'm retired. I have different medical needs now than I did when I was 55. That's a whole nother issue. And we talked about medicine. One of the problems I find that we have, especially in Curry County, but I think for all of House District 1 and a good portion of Congressional District 4, is that we don't have staff, we don't have doctors enough to, even if we had hospitals and doctors' offices, enough to staff them. I just ran into a problem at my own GP while I was having hip surgery last month. My own GP, the same week I was having my hip surgery, had a cardiac event. And so now is no longer available to do my general care after my surgery.
Was he able to find a doctor?
Yeah, that was going to be my question. So it's like musical chairs where we live as far as medical care goes. There aren't more than one person in each of the specialties, some way to cover. And I think a big portion of that is there's no place for them to live. So we can offer all sorts of incentives for doctors and nurses to come live in our county, but those incentives don't do any good to find something if there's no housing to be had.
Yep.
And I personally live in my RV, and I moved to Oregon in that situation on friends' property. I find that space works really well for me as a single person. And I think a lot of people might find that would be the case too. A lot less housekeeping, a whole lot of other stuff that you don't have to do when you have a home. Somebody else takes care of getting the electricity to you, all that stuff.
I get it.
And so not everybody needs to have 2 bedrooms and a bathroom and a roof to re-roof and a yard to mow and all that stuff. So we need to find the way of making housing available to people's needs and not the other way around.
Totally agree with you 100%.
So housing's always been an issue here as long as I can remember. And part of it, I feel, is just the availability of places to build it. I know Brookings has, what is that, Lone Ranch, where they're planning these 1,000 units of housing. And I've been hearing about that as long as I can remember here. I don't see any groundbreaking happening there, but those projects take time. Even if you remove all of the restrictions on what you can do, that still has to be built out. It takes time and people to make that happen. We don't have the kinds of contractors here to do that. We're probably going to have to bring somebody from further afoot in the state or from out of state that comes with a big enough contracting system to build that kind of, to do that kind of build out. I don't have all of the info on that yet. But those are things I have to consider when I'm talking about housing, because I hear that we just need more houses. Well, where are you going to build it? I'm standing looking at a 2,500-foot mountain. Where are you going to build on the side of that?
Yeah, no, and I think that's really this is why I love having these conversations, because what I love about it is it regionalizes the issue, right? So I was at it's personalizing the issue, and it's really helping people remember why we can't come up with we can't fund blanket projects and be like, this is exactly how you use this money. Because if I'm coming up with a federal funding stream for housing and I've got all these rules underneath it, you can't access that in Brookings or Gold Beach or Port Orford, right? Like you can't do that in Curry County. But if we look at what the space is and where you can't build and start to think about how do we creatively utilize what exists and really start to figure out what people actually need, I think that those conversations at that local level end up changing how we resource it from a higher level. And that's what I want to see happen in CD4. I want to see these conversations and what you were saying, Bret, is so incredibly valid. I was touring a place that makes they are doing manufactured homes in Eugene, and they're trying to get this statewide, and they actually are movable, so that they don't have the foundation, and they have figured out a way to get those lendable, even though they're not on a foundation.
Right.
And I think what they are doing is remarkable when it comes to housing, but we've got to figure out, where do you put that thing, right? And I think that what you're saying, Bret, is just so important, because I don't have all the answers. I don't want to be the kind of elected official that pretends that I do, but I do want to hear what the community thinks the answers are.
Well, and from their points of views, we can come up with solutions, hopefully. And I think some of that, at least from the U.S. congressional level, may be more a legislative thing. But on that note, I wanted to ask you, and all these things we've discussed, sorry to take over the questions here, you guys.
Bret, you may take over, my friend.
I wanted to get a sense from you where you think you would make your best fit when elected to Congress, where you would make your best fit, because we all know that our floor votes only mean a little bit. Committee work is where we get our stuff done. Okay. Where do you see yourself fitting in? And we don't get to pick our committee assignments. Those are obviously made by, at least in Oregon, by the Speaker of the House. But where do you see yourself fitting into committees, and where you think you could do your best work? Because obviously they all have a different a different thing to do, and we can only spread ourselves so thin. Where do you see yourself best fitting into that?
My gosh, nobody's ever asked me this question.
Because I asked myself that question this morning while I was filing my paperwork with the state of Oregon. I'm like, I chat GPT'd, and I don't use it a lot, but I said, what are all of the legislative committees just in the House, not even the Senate, and there are joint committees on top of that too. So there's Senate and House committees. There are like 20 House committees, and they all have very valid things that they do. So I'm curious to know where you think you might fit in, because that's where we get our work done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a couple of places where I find myself drawn to. Obviously, health and human services is a huge one for me. Also, judiciary, thinking about those things. But, I also have a background in agriculture advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of interest in thinking about education and workforce. Obviously, I'm passionate about Veterans Affairs. And I would like some sort of involvement when it comes to natural resources. Obviously, if government keeps going the way it's going, I would kill to be on the Oversight and Governmental Reform Committee, but I don't know if that's even like possible, But I do think a lot about what my business, the things that I am really good at, and those things do come from my background in social justice advocacy and welfare, and so. Those are the places.
There's a bee in your bonnet. I'll put that in there.
We just have a couple minutes left, and I'd like to ask each of you to quickly go over what in your careers or in your life you're most proud of. And I don't mean your dog or your children, but.
And we only have 2 minutes left.
2 minutes, so.
Ahead.
Shall I take it? Mine will be short. So just the fact that I've been able to come and live in Oregon, I've been here less than 10 years. I've only lived in Port Orford. I've only lived in Curry County. I feel like the people here have been so gracious and so helpful in letting me know who they are and what they're about, and just being friendly and being willing to let me volunteer my time in representing them in any way that I can. So not only have I been the chair with the Curry County Democrats here in Curry County, that's coming up on 5 years now, I think I've held that seat. And anybody listening, I'm looking for somebody to replace me next January. So I think it's time for a change of hands. So let's vote me out. And we need to have a different chair. I feel like it would be a good time for that. But I've also been the chair of our Stonewall Caucus for the Democratic Party of Oregon here in the state of Oregon, which was a great honor for me to do that. I came in as an interim chair, but it was during a really key time right after the election, the presidential election. And I also sit on the budget committee for our South Coast Educational Services District. So I've kind of been able to stick my fingers in a lot of things.
That's enough. Melissa, we have to give you a minute.
Yeah, we're down to about 35 seconds, Melissa.
Repeat the question really fast.
What are you most proud of?
Oh, I am most proud of the pieces of legislation that I've written and passed from my dining room table. I'm most proud of that. And I am most proud of my PhD because I barely made it out of high school. And I didn't think I could make it out of high school.
Hey,
and the fact that people have to call me doctor when I was barely making it out of high school is pretty rad.
If I had a PhD, my kids would call me doctor.
Right. And thank you both, Melissa and Bret. Wonderful show. Thank you, texters. I didn't get one text in. I apologize. So thank you again. And you're listening to KCIW 100.7 FM here in beautiful Brookings, Oregon. Thanks again, both Melissa and Bret.